Shalom. Let me get straight into this lesson. I want to say shalom to the beloved Elder Makama. I watched your lesson. It was very edifying and the water. I really appreciate that. If you see this, but I wanted to I actually watched your lesson you did on the critical race theory. I mean, facts, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I watched it on the critical race facts. And I kind of wanted to add some more to it. But the elder did a beautiful lesson going into. Matter of fact, I want you to go to subscribe to his channel. Let me go to it real quick. 1 second. All right, this is his channel right here. You can look it up, on the search engine, Critical Race Historical Facts. All right, so I want to kind of add to what he did. He did a lesson going into, how they, these Edomites, they create words out of thin air, and they give these words, add the words into the English literature, and create definitions and create a lot of confusion. And when you can control words and the meaning of words, you can make people believe whatever you want them to believe, right? So, because people don't have another reference point. So let's get into this first scripture, and I'm gonna show you proof that the so-called Native Americans that would here, because Jacob say that some of Jake's in the world that say it was already so-called black people here. That's true, but these were Israelites, and Jake still haven't shook out of that terminology Native American, because the word Native American is a stumbling block. But these were Israelites from very different tribes. Like the scripture gonna break it down. 2nd Esdras 13 and 40. It says, "Those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king, whom Shalmaneser, the king of Syria, led away captive. And he carried them over the waters, and some came they into another land, Salakia." Uh, keep going, looking for Azareth. Salakia. Let me try to find this real quick. All right, Salakia. 2nd Esdras 13 and 45. So you can read up on the whole chapter of 13, but I'm just getting straight to the point. 2nd Esdras 13:45. "For though that country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half." And remember, when King Solomon was doing dealings with was the king of Tyre, Hiram, it took him a year and a half, to get to America, and a year and a half to get back. It was 3 years. Matter of fact, I'll do that in another lesson, but proving that this talking about America, but let's prove it even more. It says, namely a year and a half, and the same region was called Azareth. So we're going to use their own so-called scholars to prove the point. So when you go into the Jewish encyclopedia right here, it says, "The name of the land beyond the great river, far away from habitation of man, in which the 10 tribes of Israel will dwell, observing their laws, the laws of Moses." Really, it's the laws of the Most High. Moses was just the one that delivered it to the children of Israel until the time of the restoration, according to 2nd Esdras. It says, "Columbus identified America with this land." Well, there you go. So this was talking about America. The people that was over here already was Israelites. So let's keep going. Let's go into some more history. So this is the original, this how the original so-called Native Americans look. So let's go here. Like the elder went into, let me go here real quick. They reclassified a lot of these so-called Native Americans as so-called Negro. This right here, it says Cherokee tribes in the Carolinas were reclassified as Negro and other slaves. This picture is over 100 plus years. It shows how the Carolina Cherokee look. These was brown, swarthy people, like the other was saying, because that's the more appropriate word to use. This word black and African, really black is a really negative word. It's a very, very hateful, negative, demeaning word. Word black is associated with some negative when you put black in front of anything. But all this confusion with the words. That's why you have to know what words mean and the origin of words. It says right here, the Cherokee India Buffalo Child. This is Denver right here. So let me go back. So I'm gonna cut back a lot of stuff into this lesson. I think this was matter of fact, the video I did a lesson on this particular original video. It was an Edomite looking guy that went into the Most High name and he said Yahweh, and they found this in New Mexico, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't went on the history in a minute, but you see that's the Paleo Hebrew. It ain't this new modern made up Hebrew with the Assyrian script. What they actually put the vowels there, the Masoretes, and it's it's not the original Hebrew. The character's not even the same. The pronunciation is way out of pocket. The pronunciation is with vowels. Let's go here. Go back. So the people that was here already, these were Israelites, not so-called Native Americans. Remember, Native American is new speak. It's new terminology. So when they can create new words, they can control narratives. Right here. Look at this guy right here. It's probably, Morgan Freeman right here. Probably reincarnated, right? You never know. Because reincarnation is biblical for you bug-outs. You just don't have the understanding to understand it, but reincarnation is real. So let's go here. This when they stole the land, these devils. I'm just trying to get to some right here. I want to show this map. So when the Edomites first came in, these was Hebrew Israelites, and they reclassified a lot of them as Negro and lumped them in. But why did they do that? Because we looked the same. We was the same people, and we still is the same people. Now you have a lot of these lighter skin complexion, so-called Native Americans. Some of them are Jakes, some of them are Edomites. You just it's through if they lineage go back into Israel, they're Hebrew Israelites. If they lineage go back to Edom, they're Edomites. Simple as that. You can't go off the skin complexion. It's all through who the forefather is. Because all the mingling with the different women. And Jake, let me, another thing too. So-called black people, they ruled the whole world at one time. So we weren't just concentrated in America, or as they like to put that African, pseudo madness on you. We was all over the whole world, and we posted up a lot of our kingdoms were set up in what today as Europe. It's really Asia. Right here. So you can see the map when these devils first came in and they was pushing, our people, slaughtering them, putting them to death, making them convert to Christianity, putting them in boarding schools, putting them on reservations, and making them, totally indoctrinating them like they did the Southern Kingdom, and you see how they pushed them back in 1784 to 1819, and it kept getting worse. 1820, I'm just working my way down to the far left. In 1839, pushing them back more, killing them, raping, robbing, whatever you can do. This is a treacherous devil. And you look at 1840, and it goes on and on. You can screenshot this. And this is all the land that they stole. And I want to go into this history as well. There's so much to get into. These were the nobility families of so-called Europe. So we didn't just rule as they like to put us in so-called Africa, but no, we ruled the whole world, and these devils was in obscurity at a point of time, roughly 1,000 years, plus. Right here, French, Dutch, Belgian, family with Negro names, and the other was going into Spain is when, that was our last stronghold, if I'm not mistaken. And then once the Edomites with Oliver Cromwell, if I'm not mistaken, them devils, and the Edomites that was coming into power, they was, they had something called the triangular slave trade because they was shipping our people from what we know today as Europe, shipping them to the Caribbean or Caribbeans and through the Americas, right? They were just moving us all over the place, all over the known world. And that's why you have Jakes that spread, we've been scattered even back in the, beginning of times. We've been scattered as a nation when we fell off, give me 1 second. Salaki, 1 second. All right, Salaki about that. So this is in And these wasn't slaves because the so-called white man is saying, you know, this devil he got a way with his words and with his deception. You know, he like to say these was rulers. King James was a so-called black man. I did lessons going into his lineage, went into his son. His son was a so-called black man. His son was known, you know, it was his son or his grandson, I forget, was known as Black Boy, you know, so-called Black Boy, Swarthy, you know, and this was all of so-called Europe. They renamed it Europe, but it wasn't originally the name of that region. Okay, this is in let's keep going, and this is the history that you have no clue of because you haven't been taught this right here. This is in so-called Central Europe. Let's keep going. Right here, I want to read this. It says the black is exhibited by the so-called Jews. And remember, this word Jew is new speak as well. Yasha'Allah is our Hebrew name. You know what I'm saying? We're not Jews. We're not Jewish. We're not Africans. We're not black. These are all new words of confusion. We, you know, come from the, you know, a lot of us come from the different tribes of Israel, right? So that's it. It says, especially dark were the Jews, so called, of Spain and Portugal. The Portuguese so called Jews was very dark, says Pritchard. And this out this book, Nature Knows No Cut Around, I believe. Matter of fact, I'm holding it right here. But yeah, it's somewhere in this book. Let's keep going. So it's so much to learn. So these is going back into the so-called Native Americans, which you got Gad and Reuben and the other various tribes of Israel that came to what you know today as America. The name America is named after Amerigo Vespucci. That's a whole nother lesson, but they just create all this confusion right here. These are Native Americans, so-called, but these are be the Israelites that was here already. Gad, Reuben, you know, Naphtali, you know, all the other 10 tribes, you know, dark, very dark skin. And you notice you have so-called East Indian people, right? They don't call them black people, but some of them are darker than the darkest Jakes that I ever saw in my life. They don't call them black people. They call you black people because black is evil, wicked, demonic, sickness, um, you know, all those evil connotations. And our people repeat that out of their own ignorance and just a rebellion because they really are black in the mind. These are the original so-called Native Americans, which these are the Hebrew Israelites. We're not just saying this. We're not just making this up. And I had some more stuff I wanted to get into, but I'm just not going to have enough time. All right, give me 1 second. Let me go back. And they had this on the Redskins helmet, you know. This was a brown flesh mascot or whatever, you know. Salakia. I wanted to read something else. But, you know, matter of fact, and they created this word white too. Man, there's so much to get into because this actually out this book, and I did lessons out this book, how so-called white folks got so rich. I advise you brothers and you sisters to go buy that book. Matter of fact, in another lesson coming up, I'll show you the cover of it, and you can get it from like Amazon or Barnes and Nobles or whatever. Because I don't think they sell it in Barnes and Nobles, but Amazon for sure. It says Homestead Act. This land is our land. So this is how the so-called white man has unfathomable wealth, and he act like he ain't did nothing wrong. You know, that's the devil. But I'm running out of time. Hopefully this lesson was edifying. Call Allah Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rakak, Kodash, Shalom, and double honors to the apostles and elders of GMS. Shalom.